Hi everyone, welcome to a Tess Academy YouTube video which is part of our GCSE biology revision lessons. Today we will be going through the heart and circulation. Remember, if you have any queries or would like personalized advice or feedback, please visit our website at tessonlineschool.com. Thank you. The first thing we will go through is the double circulatory system. The circulatory system is a system of blood vessels with a pump, which is our heart, and valves that maintain a one-way flow of blood around the body. The valves are very important and we will be returning to this shortly. Humans and mammals have a double circulatory system. Now you may wonder why it's called a double circulatory system, and it's because blood flows through the heart twice. The process of how the double circulatory system occurs is, firstly, the right ventricle pumps deoxygenated blood to the lungs where it receives oxygen and becomes oxygenated blood. Oxygenated blood returns to the heart to be pumped out to the rest of the body where it receives a speed boost due to the high amount of pressure built up due to the thick muscle walls. Then, the deoxygenated blood returns to the heart. As you can see through the diagram, the body, the heart, and the lungs are all interconnected. There are four main blood vessels that you need to be aware of. These are the vena cava, pulmonary artery, aorta, and pulmonary vein. We will return to this shortly. The benefits of the double circulatory system are that when blood travels through capillaries, it loses pressure, which reduces the speed of flow. Therefore, if oxygenated blood returns to the heart, the pressure can be raised, giving it a faster speed before sending it to the body, so all cells can be supplied with oxygenated blood much faster, which is required for respiration of the cells for their metabolic processes. We will now go through the heart structure. So as you know, the deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood travel together in the heart but at separate places. This is done to make sure that the deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood do not mix, as well as making sure that the concentration gradient is upheld so that the oxygenated blood can just travel to the respiring cells that require oxygen. Now, in terms of heart structure, let's start with the vena cava, which brings deoxygenated blood into the heart. We then have the pulmonary artery, which takes the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, where it becomes oxygenated. The pulmonary vein brings the oxygenated blood back from the lungs, which then exit through the aorta, and it carries the oxygenated blood around the body. We've got the left atrium and all of the heart valves, as well as the right atrium, the right ventricles, and the left ventricle. As you can see in the image that the right-hand side and the left-hand side are flipped. This is because we observe the heart as it is within our body. Therefore, if you ever get stuck on which side is which, remember that the left ventricle has a much thicker muscular heart wall, so look out for the muscle wall, which will show you that this is the left-hand side of the heart, and therefore that must be the left ventricle, left atrium, etc. Now we will talk about heart adaptations. So the heart has two main adaptations that you need to be aware of for exam questions. The first adaptation you need to be aware of are the two sets of valves on each side of the heart. These are called the bicuspid valve at the top and the tricuspid valves at the bottom. These prevent blood backflow. The importance of preventing blood backflow is to make sure that the deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood do not mix and intertwine. This is to make sure that there's a high and a very steep concentration gradient, and all the oxygenated blood is transferred to respiring cells that require the oxygen for their metabolic processes. The second adaptation that you need to be aware of are the muscle walls on the ventricles. As you can see, the ventricles have very thick walls, which are needed to generate high pressures when pumping the blood out. On the left-hand side, there is a much thicker left ventricle wall because the left ventricle pumps blood out to the whole body at very high pressures. Whereas on the right-hand side, the muscle wall is much thinner because the blood only needs to be pumped to the lungs, which is a very short distance away from the heart. We will now go through the blood pathway. We've been through this very briefly when describing the vessels. However, it's really important to not only remember the vessels, but to remember the way in which blood enters the heart and exits it. As you remember, it is a double circulatory system, so this occurs twice via different routes. So it's important to remember how this occurs. The blood pathway is as follows. Step 1. Deoxygenated blood enters the heart from the blood through the vena cava. Step 2. The right atria contracts and pushes the blood down into the right ventricle. Step 3. Right ventricle contracts, forcing blood out of the heart into the pulmonary artery, where it travels to the lungs. Step 4. Valves close to stop blood flowing backwards out of the heart. Step 5. Oxygenated blood enters the heart through the lungs through the pulmonary vein. Step 6. Left atria contracts and pushes blood down into the left ventricle. Step 7. Left ventricle contracts, forcing blood out of the heart through the aorta where it travels around the body. Step 8. Valves close to stop blood flowing backwards out of the heart. This is a cycle of the double circulatory system. Now, let's put our knowledge to the test from what we have learned in the video and apply it to these two questions over here. Firstly, we're going to start with a multiple choice question. Deoxygenated blood is mostly found in A. Right ventricle and left atrium, B. Right ventricle and right atrium, C. Left ventricle and right atrium, or D. Left ventricle and left atrium. You can do this independently by pausing the video and trying it out on a piece of paper yourself, and we will go through the answers very shortly. The answer is B, right ventricle and right atrium. Remember that blood enters through the vena cava, which exists on the right-hand side of the heart. Therefore, it will enter into the right atrium, which gets pushed, which then contracts and pushes the blood down into the right ventricle. The next question is a bit of a longer question. Name 2 ways in which the heart is adapted to help it pump blood around the body and explain it. Name, state, give, identify are all very similar keywords in which you do not have to write complete full sentences, and you can get away by writing a scientific term or just a phrase or even a word sometimes. Whereas explain requires you to use scientific knowledge as well as full comprehensive language to make sure that you've communicated your scientific knowledge thoroughly. So have a go at these questions now independently by pausing the video. We'll return and complete the question and give you the answer very shortly. One of the answers you could have mentioned are valves. Valves contract to prevent blood backflow. If you have missed out anything mentioned over here, make sure to write it down using corrections in a different color pen to help you revise. Another adaptation you could have mentioned are thicker ventricle walls. So particularly on the left ventricle, it has a very thick wall made up of muscle cells which pump blood out to the whole body at very high pressures. The last adaptation you could have mentioned are the thinner right ventricle muscle walls. The right ventricle walls pump blood out only to the lung, which is a very short distance and therefore requires a much lower pressure. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you would like further support, we offer one-to-one sessions and group sessions for key stages 1, 2, and 3, along with specially formulated 11+ GCSE and A-level lessons. Further information can be accessed on our website at tessonlineschool.com. If you would like further resources or information, please contact the following numbers. Thank you.